Yeah. So, ooh, that seems official.
That's very official.
Ooh.
Recording. I all of a sudden got nervous and started sweating. Oh my goodness. All right. Don't mess up. Don't mess up.
So Nathan, can you repeat that first technique, please?
Sure. So diagonal technique. Diagonal technique is different in hand position, first off, where you are, instead of holding your cane at the very end of the cane, you're going to choke your hand down on the cane handle, and you're going to have your hand holding the cane handle where the handle meets the cane shaft. So right there on the edge. Your palm is going to be facing down, and your pointer finger is still pointed down the cane. So you're still using your pointer finger the way you did before. You've just moved your cane hand down the handle. The cane tip will be diagonally. So say you're holding it with your right hand. It's going to be diagonally to the right about 45 degrees and diagonally down 45 degrees. So it will stay on the ground in front. If you're holding it with your right hand, the cane tip will be on the ground in front of your left foot, but pushed way out there in front diagonally so that it's not real close to you. It's going to be out in front of you. If you're holding with your left hand, the cane tip will be pushed out in front of your right foot. So it will always cross your body in this technique. Your cane handle, as you're holding it, should extend beyond your wrist. So the reason that you're choked down on the cane is so that you're going to let the handle stick beyond the end of your wrist. It shouldn't be touching your forearm. It should be away from your forearm. This way, if it bumps into anything, it'll keep your hand just a little bit safer. You're not going to hit things with your hand. You're going to hit the cane handle. Okay. What you do when you're walking with this cane technique, the diagonal technique, is you're just pushing the cane in front of you. There's no sweeping back and forth. There's none of that stuff. You're literally just holding the cane stationary in front of you. Your arm will be almost at your side, but a little bit forward. Think of I always think of it like if you were to do a full like zombie or Frankenstein thing, your arm is straight out in front. It's kind of like a half Frankenstein zombie thing where it's kind of, again, diagonally just raised up at the shoulder. It's not, you're not holding it straight out in front of you. You're not centering your hand. You're just moving your hand up a little bit forward. So it's off to the side. You're just pushing this cane tip along, and what this technique is used for specifically is indoor areas with no drop-offs that you are familiar with. You have to meet all three of those qualifications like a checklist. So think indoors, it's got to be inside. You got to be, you have to be in a familiar area that you know, and there has to be no drop-offs anywhere. The benefit.
Nathan, why is that important that it has to be a familiar area?
Gotcha. We'll go over that. So familiar is important. You want to make sure when you're using this technique, if you're noticing the way I described it, and if you're trying this out right now, you're noticing that the cane tip stays in one spot in front of you. That means it's in front of one side of your body. So your left foot if you're right-handed, your right foot if you're left. So it exposes the other foot to obstacles. So that's the drawback of this technique, is that you're exposing half of your body to obstacles. So if there were drop-off somewhere and you were coming at that drop-off at an angle, you would miss it with this technique. That's why there can't be any drop-offs. And it has to be familiar because you're generally aware of all of the things that may be around. So you know generally what's going on. What the technique is just making sure that you're, finding the things that you're supposed to be finding, the landmarks you're supposed to be looking for. And that's kind of what this technique does. It also conserves energy. You don't use a whole lot of energy. You're just pushing it along in front of you. Um, and so that, Latricia, does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this technique is really good. Like, say you work in kind of an office environment, you've worked there every day for years, and there's no drop offs. You're in your building, where every trash can is, everything in the whole thing. Diagonal is a great technique to use in that situation, because all you're trying to do is find the room you're looking for, or you're just looking for the carpet because the carpet's your landmark to turn right or left or something. And this technique is just perfect for that. You're not blowing out a lot of energy. You're still protected in front of you, and it's just doing its job, just kind of keeping you generally safe. But you already know where most things are anyway in that situation. So any questions on diagonal technique? Yeah, these are all things, all techniques that, we can go over and talk about in person when we get the chance to next time, but keep tabs on if you've got any real questions and you want to see them, or make sure you're doing it right, that when we get together, or when you and your O&M gets together in the future, say, hey, go over that diagonal technique, or go over this technique real quick, and then we'll go over those techniques. I just want to make sure that that there's a thing out there. You don't want to use this outside, because outside there's a lot of drop-offs, and you will miss them with this technique. So this is not for outside, but it's pretty good. You can use this technique to trail along walls. So if you're walking down a hallway and you're trying to find the third door on the left, you could use this technique. You keep against the wall. The cane tip is against the wall, and you can use it to walk down that hallway and find the third door on the left. It's important. It's important, though, if you're going to use this inside a hallway like that, whatever side of the hallway you're on, the cane tip has to be in the other hand. The cane tip should always cross your body. Does that make sense? So if you're on the right side of the hallway, you got to be holding with your left hand. If you're on the left side of the hallway, you got to be holding with the right. The cane must always cross your body, or else you're totally exposed, because you want that cane in front of you. Let's see. Okay. So there are a couple common issues that end up happening with this type of cane technique. One is the cane tip, or the cane is too close to the body. It's like across your body, and you feel it with your legs. You're running into it. What you want to do is just angle the cane tip more forward, and it keeps that cane away from your body. Sometimes the cane tip will snag on the wall, or something like that. If you're using this to trail a wall, you're bumping into everything. If you're trailing a wall, you're going to be hitting stuff. So you need to keep a nice relaxed shoulder, a nice relaxed arm, and just know that you're going to have to keep moving your cane tip away from the wall as you bump into things. But that usually solves the issue right there. All right. Any questions on diagonal?
No. Does it matter if you have a ball, or what kind of cane tip you have?
It should not. No. Remember, indoors, you're probably going to be, there are only several surface types that you're going to have indoors. It's usually more smooth and machined inside than it would be outside. The only problem I could see is if you have like a pencil tip, like a non-rolling, very sharp tip, and you've got shag carpet or something in your house, which
Mhm.
if that's going on, then, you know, the shag carpet's a whole separate issue.
Yeah, you might bring the carpet with you.
Right. So, but that's, yeah, it shouldn't matter the type of cane tip you have or anything like that. Even I know Dana has an ID cane that this technique should be pretty good with that cane as well, because you're not moving it a whole lot. You're not doing a whole lot with it. It's just pushing out in front of you. Nice and easy. All right. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next technique, which is everybody's favorite, 2-point touch or touch technique, whatever you want to call it. We, in our field, with the cane tips that a lot of you guys have, with the rolling balls and those rolling marshmallows, we actually do not use touch technique very often. If you're using those rolling balls and things like that, you're using a technique called constant contact. It's a slight variation, and the only difference is you never pick your cane tip off the ground. That's the only difference. Everything else is the same. Touch technique is a technique that you guys all know. Coming from white cane day, they also, I guess it's been referred to as the Hoover technique, which I didn't know, named after a guy who kind of invented it. But touch technique or 2-point touch is simple. The way I describe it is you start with your hand and arm position. And the goal is, I always think of shaking someone's hand, and that puts my hand in the exact right position. As I stand there, if I extend my hand to shake someone's hand, my hand will naturally be centered on my body. I'm not going to have my arm way out to the side that it's on. So if I'm right-handed, my right hand's not going to be to my right side. As I shake someone's hand, I extend it out in front of me and I put it in the middle. And that's where your hand should be. Your hand should be about 6 inches in front of you. You don't want to have it way out there because you're just going to get super tired holding your arm up. And you don't want to have your cane hand touching your stomach, because if you do and you hit you snag your cane tip or hit something, it's going to kind of hit you in the solar plexus, and you'll probably knock the wind out of yourself. So the goal is to have your hand centered about 6 inches in front of you. Your thumb will be up, just like in shaking someone's hand. Your palm will be faced to the side. Your thumb will be up. So if you were to stick your thumb straight up, it would go point straight to the sky. You're going to grab the cane and you're going to point your pointer finger down the flat side of the cane. So it will almost look like the cane becomes an extension of your pointer finger. This is very important because, one, anywhere you point the cane tip to, your finger's actually pointing at. And you can use that awareness of your finger pointing to let you know where obstacles are. And so additionally, pointing your finger down the cane gives you a little bit more leverage on that handle. If you're just holding it with no finger extension with your pointer finger and you're sweeping the cane back and forth, it can actually be a little bit more tiring than if you extend your pointer finger. That pointer finger lets you move the cane a little more easily. So just that simple change can actually increase your endurance and keep you from getting as tired with that cane. If you notice, I'm always worried about endurance. I don't know why. It's just in my mind constantly. But if I could do anything to make anything more efficient, I'm going to find a way to do it, because secretly I think I'm lazy. And if I can save a little bit of energy, I'm going to do it. But that finger, it will help. Okay. So your hand is in front of you, 6 inches in front of you, centered on your body. Your upper arm can be nice and relaxed. You don't need to bring your shoulder up. I've seen a lot of times when people start this technique or are nervous. So if you're in a new environment and you're really nervous, what you will find your body doing is your cane arm will get really stiff, and you'll start to raise that shoulder, almost like it's almost like a fear reaction where your shoulders come up like you're scared of something. Keep it relaxed. It will help you to use the cane technique better. It will help you to gauge your distances better. It will do you a world of good. If you're constantly tense like that, you can kind of get a crick in your neck, and cause yourself shoulder pain and all kinds of things. So as much as you can, keep that upper arm and shoulder relaxed while you're holding this out there. The cane, as you hold the cane, you're going to hold high up on the cane handle, right at the edge. Whereas before you on diagonal, you were choked all the way down. Now you're going to be choked all the way up. You're going to create an arc with the cane. Just your wrist will move back and forth. It's just done by your wrist. There are several reasons it's only your wrist. One is you have fine muscle control when you're using your wrist. If you start using your arm, waving your arm back and forth with the cane, you cannot do things consistently. Your arc will be all over the place. And even if you're really good at doing that, your arc is still not going to be consistent. You want a consistent arc. It should be just wider than you are on either side. You want to make sure your arc always is the same width, because if you change your arc width consistently, when you do hit an obstacle, you don't know where it's at. You have no idea. It could be 6 inches off. It could be a foot off. If your arc is all over the place and you hit something on the edge, you really don't know where it's at. So the more you can bring that arc into one consistent back and forth, the better control you'll have, and the more you'll be able to tell where things are. But that fine motor movement, you got to use just the wrist. And that's why I worry about how much energy you waste, is that takes a lot of energy to just use your wrist. If you're used to using your arm, you've got to change it. Focus on the wrist back and forth. The other reason that you're using just your wrist is so that you don't cause any injuries to your joints in your hand. If you're going back and forth and your hand is kind of rolling, or your palm is face down, your wrist is not meant to bend that way repeatedly. It can do it, a little bit, but eventually it's going to start to wear out. So you want to make sure your palm is to the side, your thumb is up, and it's just your wrist back and forth. Your wrist can handle that movement for your entire life, and you'd be okay. But that touch technique, if you're doing classic touch technique, your cane tip will only tap on the outside of your arc. As you move to the left, it'll tap. As you move to the right, it'll tap. The cane tip will stay no more than an inch. I mean, it's so close to the ground because you want to be able to catch everything. That cane tip comes up, tap, tap, tap. And that's how in classic, you'll see in a lot of cinema and things like that, movies, TV shows, whatever, you'll see people, or even the older movies or instructional videos, you'll see people tapping, and you hear that distinct tap, 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 tap sound as someone with a cane is walking by. And that is pretty much, let me make sure, the kind of finer points of touch technique. You'll want to stay in step. I forgot about that. Sorry. So does anyone know what being in step with the cane means? What does that mean? Oh man, everyone's quiet. All of us O&M instructors are crying inside.
Doesn't that mean when you move, the cane moves as well?
Exactly.
I know, but I had to unmute.
Oh, okay. All right. So what do we got? That's right. That is perfect, Nita. Juanita. Michelle, did you have something?
I just wanted to say, like she said, when your left foot is out, your cane is on the right and the other way around.
Perfect. So think about walking normally without a cane or anything. When I say normally, I mean just like you and your body walking from point A to point B. Your arms will naturally swing opposite of your feet. And that's just to counterbalance your weight. As your foot goes forward on the left, your right arm's going to go forward to kind of keep you balanced. If you do it the other way, you can walk a certain way, but there's a reason why people in movies pretending to be robots will walk with the same arm and the same leg at the same time because it just looks weird. It doesn't feel natural. When you're using the cane, it should do the same thing. Like Michelle and Juanita said, it should move opposite of whatever foot is going forward. So if left foot goes forward, the cane goes to the right. Right foot goes forward, the cane goes back to the left. What this is going to do is the way we size your canes for you is it's going to protect. So once it goes to the left side, the next time your left foot gets to that point where the cane tip is now, then the cane tip will have fallen in that general area. So if you're walking out of step or the cane is going on the same side as whatever foot, then you're not really getting that protection of the cane tip falling generally in the area your footfalls are going to be in. So you want to really focus on making sure they're the opposite side. That's kind of why they do that. That's why we size the canes the way we do. Why we make sure that you're trying to walk separately. In this way, it keeps the cane in step with your feet. You don't want your feet to be moving like really fast and the cane tip moving slow. It should be in the same tempo to keep you safe enough. It also keeps you from being anxious and sweeping your cane too much, because if you do it too much, then you'll walk like 15 feet, your arm will be on fire and you won't be able to go anymore. So all of this is designed, like people spent a long time trying to figure out the best way to do it. And this touch technique or 2-point touch is kind of the like, that's it. That's the top level. That's the best technique for getting anywhere in all the environments we normally travel in, cities and rural and all that stuff. It seems to be the best one. Okay. Any questions on touch technique so far?
Yes, please. This is Anastasia. Can you tell me what the name of that tip is? And is it what do I do? Take the rolling marshmallow off of my cane and put a different tip on?
Wait, what now? What?
The first question is what is the name of the tip? What do you call
tip?
that cane?
Oh, no.
one
This isn't a cane. This is a technique. This can be used with any cane. You can use it with your rolling marshmallow and all that stuff, your rolling ball. You can use this technique, but you don't have to with those rolling tips. I'll go over the technique that you guys are more familiar with here in a second. The only thing that changes between touch technique that I'm talking about and the constant contact, which is what most of you guys are probably using, is that your cane tip stays on the ground. It never comes off the ground.
Right.
You roll it back and forth instead of tapping. And that's really the only difference. So there's no need for a tip, anything like that.
For some reason, I misunderstood right from the beginning. Then I thought, well, this must be some cane I didn't know about.
Okay. No,
I understand now. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Sometimes I'm a little dense.
This is this cane technique, touch technique, you will hear us harping on you so much in the beginning of your training because this is the building block for all of your travel with the cane. This one right here, it's going to be what every other technique is built off of. So you have to have this technique down, one, to get where you want to go, and two, to be able to use those other techniques as they're taught. So you're going to hear us a lot of time, get that cane tip in staff. Oh, your arc is too wide, or widen it on the right, or whatever we need to do to kind of fix the cane techniques. We're going to harp really hard in the beginning on this particular one, because this one is so important. You could actually probably get away with just knowing touch technique and not knowing a lot of the others, and you would be okay for most of your travel. There's only a very few times that you would ever have to absolutely have something else, but this one is pretty much the one. Everything else is just a variation of this one. So this is the one we spend the most time on. This is the one we make sure you know the most. And it will keep you the safest. Not 100% safe. Nothing's 100%. But it's a good technique to have and to know and to practice and make sure that you have down. Let's see here. Another point is, with touch technique, you are always going forward. You're never going backwards. You're never going sideways. You always go towards your cane in a forward motion. If you think you veered somewhere, don't sidestep to the side, because as you travel forward and then you start sidestepping, you have not cleared anything to the side. You have no idea what's over there. Want to turn your body. It's always a turn. It doesn't have to be a big turn, just a little turn. But you want to make sure you're always moving forward, never to the side. We see a lot of they call it an oblique movement, where you're kind of moving forward and sideways at the same time. Just turn your belly button. That's how I always think of it. If I want to go to the right, I turn my belly button that way. And that's really where I'm turning things. Doesn't matter where my head's at. I'm always going towards where my body is pointed. So if you need to make a turn, make a turn. Okay. Any other questions on touch?
Well, even if you have the ball, you're supposed to tap on the ground rather than roll.
No. So now we'll talk about that one.
I mean, for the touch technique.
Yes, if you wanted to use the touch technique, even if you had a ball, you could still do it. Tap, tap, tap. There might be sometimes, even with a ball, you would want to use touch technique. Let's say you were crossing a street in a real rural area, and that concrete is really beat up. Like you're just snagging in everything. Even with a ball, you're snagging in all kinds of stuff. First off, I would slow way down. That would be step one, is I would stop walking so fast. And two, you may want to switch to tapping so that you're not catching your cane tip and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a question.
Sure.
As you and Maddie know, I travel like in a rural area, and I'm shorelining with the grass, and a lot of times my cane will get stuck in the grass. Would touch technique be better for that, or would it be worse since I'm contacting carves sometimes?
No, it'd be that's a whole separate thing. We'll talk about shorelining in a minute.
Okay,
right?
sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a good question. It's a good lead in. I like that you lead in sometimes. So we will get into that. The snagging in the grass on the edge, even if you were doing touch technique, and you were trying to shoreline, your cane tip would still go into the grass. So you would still have that issue.
Okay.
What I notice with grass is you gotta, there's like it's a weird thing, and you gotta kind of figure this out. So you gotta, like, there's a light touch that you can use when you're going into the grass that keeps it from snagging as much. And I just, like I said, I will find the easiest way to do things. And I have the same issue with grass that everyone else does. It's annoying as you roll over in there, your cane tip gets snagged, and then you gotta lift your elbow and your arm up to get it out, and you've lost like half a step. But I've figured out, if you got a really light touch on that cane, and if I hold my hand down just a little lower, it doesn't snag as much. The cane should be held at a height for you, for every person individually, personally. It should not be too high, and it shouldn't be too low. Because notice, if you hold your cane higher or lower, you change the angle that the cane is at, and that affects how the cane tip travels on the ground. So you have to play with your hand height in order to figure out what the best height is for you traveling. Each person's got like a best height going on. And that's why we size the canes the way we do. If your cane was way too long, you would have next to no angle at all. It'd be so flat, and your cane tip would just run into everything. And if your cane tip was super short, you'd have a very steep cane angle, and then it would kind of snag towards your feet every time it touched the ground. And that would also be equally as annoying. So maybe Michelle, play with your hand angle. We can talk about that next time we meet, or you can do that on your own. And we'll talk about it Monday. But all right, so touch technique. Any more questions? These are great questions, by the way. Okay. So the next technique is constant contact. And as we talked about, it follows the exact same rules as touch technique, except the cane tip just rolls along the ground. And that's it. Your arc width should be exactly the same width. You should still be using just your wrist as you go back and forth. You want to stay in step with your feet, so that all should be exactly the same. There should be no difference except for hearing a from the cane tip rolling. That's really it. Why would you use, aside from the tip, let's take the tip out of it, because you can use touch or constant contact with any cane, any tip. Why do you think you would use constant contact over touch technique? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I don't even know
Because
what that is.
there's some things that you might come in contact with going along the ground that you might miss if you're tapping.
I like it. That's pretty much it. As you
Like the
roll-
lines in a sidewalk, you might miss them when you're tapping.
Exactly. That if your cane tip comes up, even if you just use touch technique, I always suggest that this constant contact, there'll be some cases where you're going to want to switch. Like if you're coming up on a street and you want to find truncated domes, you definitely want to switch to constant contact. There may be even one additional technique you may want to slip into as well, but you want your cane tip on the ground so that you don't miss something. And that's really why you use constant contact. So this is all great. Someone said they don't know what it is. Who was that?
That was, hi, this is Dana. I said that.
Okay. We'll definitely, are you working with us? Are you, Dana? like
Yeah,
one-on-one?
I'm with Maddie. I just started a couple weeks ago. So
Okay. She will definitely be covering a lot of these with you. The touch and constant contact. Those are the kind of bread and butter of
ID came right
no, she's doing ID cane. I did hear you try and convince her to get a mobility cane though.
I'm gonna keep trying.
What's the difference between an ID cane and a mobility cane?
Your ID cane is going to be much smaller. It's made to fold up and be more compact when it's not in use, because you're only breaking it out when you're trying to show other people that you have a vision impairment. You're not really using
I
it.
mean, it's used to carry more than use.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like it'd be a good one to take on a plane, because you'll let everyone know you're in that, but it can fold up and be packed in your pocket or purse or something. Way easier than the mobility cane. So, or if you're like, say, going to the opera, I don't know if there's an opera around here, but you're in your monkey suit or your dress, and then you don't want to have a big old mobility cane too. You could fold up the ID cane. Pretty small, but
Well, like you take a tiny purse when you go evening, so you take a tiny cane too.
right. I always tell people you should have separate canes for separate occasions. You should have a really nice going out cane if you go out sometimes. I mean, like, why not? You wouldn't wear the same pair of ratty old sneakers going out to dinner that you would wear working in the grass in the yard. You would have two pairs of sneakers. So why would you have one cane? But that's just me. You could do what you want.
I do get that question from a lot of clients. Should I have two canes? And
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I would have a whole closet full, but that's how I am. You guys, some of you have seen the amount of canes that I like to talk about. And like Juanita and everyone in Highlands got to see this laundry list of canes that I brought out there to show everyone. So, but yeah. So Dana, the thing is we're talking about these techniques and you haven't got to experience them yet, but you will, and Maddie will definitely try and convince you to learn these techniques and get a cane that can do all of them.
okay.
And
all
she's right.
Is there more than just two canes?
I mean, you can get into really specialty canes.
Okay.
Like, the basic three are the ID cane, the mobility cane, and the support cane. The support cane's just the
Okay.
small ones with the handle, like, walking around with.
Okay.
But
Those are the basic three.
fine, they're white instead of black or whatever.
Right. They're white and red. They all have the same basic color pattern, but you can get really specialized. There's canes for tall grass. There's cane tips for sand and snow and gravel. There are glow in the dark canes. You have canes that are like $600-700 that can sense, like if there's a tree there, it can kind of tell you there's something there.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
I mean, there is just a whole world of cane technology. But really the basic three, mobility, support, and ID, they can pretty much do everything.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So next technique. So we've gotten diagonal so far. We've talked about touch technique, which is just tap, tap, tap. Constant contact, which is just roll, roll, roll. And then someone mentioned one already, shorelining or trailing, whichever you want to call it. Trailing is usually the term used for when you've got your hand on an object and you're trailing an object, walking around it. And shorelining is more the term used for when you're doing that with your cane. So shorelining is you're using any one of the techniques we talked about, but you're keeping the cane tip. You're following an edge of something. Like if you're on a sidewalk, you're following the grass on the edge of the sidewalk. Or if you're inside a hallway and you're using
Mm.
Did we lose him?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is David.
He's still there, but it's just like frozen.
Sometimes it's just me on my end, so I didn't want to interrupt. We'll just wait for him to come back. I know he's talking about shorelining, and I know a lot of people use that and probably could use a brush up.
Mm-hmm.
I think with these storms, we're all getting hit at different moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm back, guys. Sorry about that.
Oh, that storm did it to him.
The storm made it, knocked all the power out.
Oh, boy.
I'm back. We won't be stopped. Can't stop, won't stop. Okay, so back to where we were talking about shorelining with the cane. Did you guys hear that part or?
Yes.
All right,
We
so
heard most of it.
yeah, so shorelining is just the technique you're using your cane to follow along the edge of something.
Yeah.
You're on a sidewalk and you're using constant contact and you're just tapping the edge of the sidewalk every time your cane gets to that one side. That's shorelining. If you're inside using diagonal technique, the cane is crossed your body and you've got the cane tip against the wall and you're just following along the wall, that's shorelining. That's all it is. Same things we've been talking about, just following along something. With Michelle, back to your earlier question, would touch technique be better when shorelining grass, or would constant contact be better when shorelining grass? You can use both, but my whole issue with touch technique is that when you're rolling your cane along using constant contact, you know exactly the point where your cane hits that when the surface changes. So when you go from concrete, grass, you know exactly the point in your arc where that happens when you're using constant contact. When you're using touch technique, you just know that on one side you've got concrete, on the other side you've got grass, but you don't know where that change happens. You just know it's somewhere in there. You know what I mean? So I do like constant contacts better for shorelining two different surfaces. It just seems to give you more knowledge of where exactly the change occurs. I think about when you're walking along, like your neighborhood, there's no sidewalk. So once you lose the grass and then you get driveway, you could still feel that driveway seam with constant contact. But with touch, you would absolutely lose it. You wouldn't know. So
My road, nothing but I have like I don't have any like my street is nothing but road. No sidewalks my road. That's kind of dangerous for me because like I like to go walking. So they need to have like a sidewalk or something, but they don't have it, just a road.
Yeah, I think constant would be better. It just seems to be better to find that edge, because if you're just using touch, you can actually get so close to the edge you could kind of fall over it. So
that's why I stay like in like the grassy area where there's I know I'll be safe.
Yeah.
In the grass.
So some general issues that people run into when they're shorelining. One of them is, so you're walking along and say you're trailing a wall And for some reason, it almost feels like you keep walking into the wall as you're going along.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk into it, you kind of step away from it, you walk into it again. So what's happening is you haven't changed your angle that you're walking. And so even though you keep fixing it, you're just fixing the symptom. You're still walking into the wall. So what you need to do is slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, turn away from the wall. That's all it is. If you turn away from the edge, then it'll prevent you from continuing to walk into or off the edge of whatever. I'm sure we've all done that. There's another one where you just keep losing the edge, where you're just walking and all of a sudden it's gone and you're like, well, where'd it go? And then you sidestep and, oh, okay, there it is again. And then you lose it again. And then you sidestep and there it is. Well, again, you're now just facing away from that edge. You need to slightly turn towards it. And these are such small turns, not like a full big old turn. I mean, just a tiny little adjustment is usually all it takes. You can always tell how you're facing towards the edge by where on your arc you're hitting that edge. So if you're face towards the edge, as your cane comes toward that edge, you're going to hit it and it'll be right in front of you. You'll hit that edge right in the front of you. Your finger will be pointed straight ahead. Remember, your finger's down the flat side of the cane. And then you'll notice, oh, this edge should be on my side, not in front of me. So I need to turn slightly away. Or if you're following along the edge and you have to reach your arm way over to find that edge because it's just way out there. Well, the edge hasn't done anything. You have. You've drifted. And so you need to get a little bit closer. All right. So the shorelining is, it seems like it would be super easy, but there's just little problems you can have that may, make a big difference. So get comfortable with hitting those shorelines. It's something you got to practice to make sure that you're hitting right on that outside edge of your arc. And that's why you have to be consistent with your arc and be aware of where your cane tip is pointing when you hit something. You got to know. That's like, yeah, it should be part of you. You should know exactly where things are whenever you hit them. Okay, let me see here. All right. Any questions on shorelining or any of that?
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a friend that's has to use one, but sometimes he has trouble. That person has trouble when there's like first time he goes on the sidewalk and it slants a little bit.
Yeah.
And he almost fell one time.
When you're dealing with slanting sidewalks, it's really tough. I got another client who's actually got that same issue. She has some balance issues. And so if she's on something uneven, it just creates a huge issue for her. Oh, okay.
And you can't see at all, hardly.
Yeah.
Can't see at all.
Yeah, sorry, a second. Anyone in the Sarasota area, apparently there's a tornado warning right now. So, yay. Yeah. But
as I say, don't get wet today.
well, hopefully the roof doesn't get blown off this place. But so yeah, with that, the biggest thing with unevenness is just trying to know which way the grade is leaning toward.
Okay.
You're always going to feel that it's leaning a certain way by how your feet feel and what your legs are kind of doing to make you stand. If like the grade is sloping to your left, think about your body has to move itself to the right to compensate. So you'll feel your legs actually push your body to the right in order to compensate for that. So knowing which way the grade is going is the first step. And then, you know, consciously compensating. Don't overcompensate because that'll make you fall as well.
Nathan,
Mhm.
that when I want like uneven surfaces, like say like I'm on like a hill or something like that, I notice it. But when I'm on the hill, I kind of get like off balance a little bit. I'm on
Yeah.
like a but I got this. I noticed it though. I noticed that though. And I don't.
Yeah,
want to
maybe-
get off of it.
Maybe a support cane would be good too for both cases, you know, having it is, you can use 2 canes at the same time. You don't just need, you know, if you need a support cane, you need a support cane, and there's no problems with that. But you can use a long cane for preview while gaining support from the other cane.
I was training with Raspberry next week.
All right.
Yep.
Thank goodness.
I'm
Rose.
excited. I'm excited.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm looking at my list of techniques, and I gotta be honest, there's quite a few left, maybe 3 more. So I think what we can do is pause it here. And the next time I'm on, we can cover the next couple of techniques.
Okay.
But that's the basics. So we covered diagonal, 2-point touch or touch technique, constant contact, and shorelining. And those are the first 4, the basics of flat ground.
Right.
But does anybody have any kind of follow-on questions or any of that?
Thank you.
How are you supposed to hold the cane when you're going downstairs? The support cane.
The support cane.
Yeah, it's white and red though.
Right. So the support cane, I would use it, I would take each step at a time, you know, and then I would match cane and both feet on each step. Both feet on each step. So I get all 3 points of contact on one step before I take the next step down. If
Okay.
possible, I'd aim for the rail too. I'd use the rail.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would match everything. I wouldn't try and fly down that staircase with
Yeah.
like double time.
I've been practicing that with my physical therapist going up and down the stairs. So
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes,
please.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Anastasia again. Can you tell me, will part 2 of this class be next Thursday?
So I kind of do every other, but let's take a look here.
Okay. I just want to make sure so I don't miss it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so it'll be.
There's always good stuff on here every Thursday, though.
There it is.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
We're still meeting next Thursday though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The electrician.
Yeah, they just have different people. Letitia might be on or somebody
Yeah.
else.
It'll be me.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't make through all the techniques. They're hard. It's hard to describe over the phone or over Zoom. Again, you know, if you got any questions when we're in person with you and your instructors, you can just ask about the technique, how it's done, the final points, check on if we're doing it right. Not going to say we get some sort of weird enjoyment out of correcting cane techniques because that'd be weird, but you know, we'll do it. It's our job.
Nathan, we'll have to work on that shorelining on Monday
Okay, we can do that.
because I'm always getting stuck in the grass.
Mhm.
Yeah.